Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to your Rangers Review Q&A show. I popped out the request for questions on the community page a little earlier on, and you guys have delivered. We've got a host of questions that have been fired in, and it brings me great delight to say I'm not alone on this episode. Jonny joins me. How's it going, Jonny?
Good, mate. Good. I'm delighted to be on with your good self. A wee window of opportunity opened up for me, so I thought I would give you a bell and tell you I was free. I'm dressed up for the occasion, as you can see, in my hoodie here with a mismatched cord, but never mind. Here I am, and hopefully we can have some entertaining 40 minutes of Rangers chat.
Absolutely. It's great timing as well because you will always hear us roaring the username. 2 hours ago, asked the question, where has Mad Jonny been? So there you go, just for you, buddy. Here is Mad Jonny, and on the Q&A show. So let's get stuck in. First question comes from JD McLean, who says, hearing the list of young prospects potentially leaving the club, have we done all we can to give them a chance to flourish at Ibrox? Hearing comments regarding them having man-of-the-match performances, followed by not quite cutting it. After these man-of-the-match performances, they get hustled to the back of the line, and we watch the same players in the same positions getting the same criticism year after year. We need to show faith in players when they play well. I don't see anything in Clement that suggests he'll be any different from previous managers on this. So, Jonny, I think this stems from the fact that over the weekend, Alex Lowry and Leon King have been linked with moves away from the club. Adam Devine is free to leave as well. And there seems to be certainly a lack of young players making it through the academy and featuring consistently for the first team. And but Clement is someone does have a good track record of playing young players, but what do you make of this? We don't really see many coming through. I think Cole McKinnon trying to push for more of a sort of starting slot in that first team. Bailey Rice, of course, just coming back from injury, is another that we all have high hopes for. But it's few and far between, is it not?
It is few and far between, Derek. And one of the first questions I asked Philip Clement when I sat down in front of him in the first couple of weeks was, what do you make of the Rangers youth setup? And he was quite guarded about it, quite guarded about the quality of the prospects. And he talked about Ross McCausland, and he was pressed on whether or not there was more players there, and he didn't think there were. He didn't think there were more players that he could go and get and put into his first team at that time. I thought it was interesting because, Leon King had played in Champions League. He'd been a big project, I think, for Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, who saw him as someone who could develop. And then I think Zach Lovelace, prior to his injury, just before Clement came in, had performed well over the course of, I think, 2 or 3 games and looked like a real bright spark on the right wing. So, it took me by surprise. Ross McCausland was never someone from watching the B team that I thought was likely to be a Rangers first-team player. And I have to say I've changed my mind on that. I think he's been fantastic since he's come in. And look, I don't think he's going to play every single game, but I think he's a handy player to have as a squad option, and he gives you a lot of energy and dynamism, and he can score a goal. So I really like what he's brought. So well done to Clement for spotting him, because I don't think there's any doubt if Michael Beale had remained the manager, I think Ross McCausland would have left. I think Michael Beale thought the same as I did, to be honest, which was that maybe Ross was barking up the wrong tree with Rangers. But delighted to have been proved wrong on that one. What I would say about Clement, though, is overall, if you look at his record, he has been a youth development coach. And the reason that he's quite an inexperienced manager overall, I think this is his 8th season as a manager, 8th or 9th season, despite being, I think, 50 or 51, is because he spent a good deal of his career right after finishing up as a player, obviously a player of high repute, having been a Belgian international and played at Bruges for many years. He went into youth coaching, and that's what he thought he would do. So you're talking about a guy who's got a real background in this area and understands this area. And what I would say is the transfers kind of back that up. He's gone and got young players. You look at Igamani, Hefty, and I don't think there's any doubt that that's the kind of player that he's looking to bring at Rangers. The question is, does he just think that the players that are in the building for various reasons aren't quite good enough? And I suspect that is the case, Derek. I think, everyone has a different opinion on football, and, we're not always right. I've got strong opinions on certain players. I had a bit of a Twitter spat the other day. John McGinn, he's not for me, Derek. He never has been, and he never will be. The style of John McGinn, I don't really rate him.
Okay.
So some people look at me and think I'm absolutely mad for that, as you kind of just done. And that's football. Everyone's got a different opinion on different players, and some are right and some are wrong, and some are right at certain clubs and some are wrong at others. And Clement's clearly made that decision. Do I think that there's a scenario where Alex Lowry could make it at Rangers? Talent-wise, of course. But Clement's in the background and seeing things that we aren't seeing. He's seen his attitude, he's seen his application, he's seen his commitment to nutrition, fitness, tactical awareness, and all these things have got to come together. And what I would say about someone like Lowry, who Rangers fans obviously look at and say, well, look at the technical quality of this lad. The way modern football is, you need to have more than that. And, he went to Hearts and was unable to get a regular game and didn't really develop in his time there. And his kind of season petered out. And if you can't make it at Hearts, you're never going to make it at Rangers. So I think there's a body of evidence there that suggests that maybe Alex Lowry does need to go out and get a season where he's getting a lot of game time, because he's not getting any younger. Yeah. And as every season presses on, he's missing an opportunity to go and build a career. Yeah. And finally, I think we've still not seen enough of Zach Lovelace, Derek. I would have liked to have seen more of him, but it's a few managers now. Stephen Davis clearly thought highly of him because when he was in charge, he brought him in. But
yeah,
that apart, there's been a reluctance to use him, and I think Leon King, he's just a player that needs to go out and get game time. He needs to be tested. But you've got to remember, young Lewis Mayo went to Kilmarnock. He's now one of the best centre-halves in the league. He is a reliable, no-nonsense defender, Derek. And he's one that you would say Leon King absolutely eclipsed in terms of talking to people around the club about the potential. So Lewis Mayo has been able to go out and do that. And you've got to say that Leon King, I think there's something there, but I think he needs to go and almost be toughened up a little bit, go and find his right position. Is he a centre-half or is he a central defensive midfielder? That's a question I asked of Craig Mulholland, the former youth development chief at Rangers. And he was adamant, he's a centre-half. Leon King's a centre-half. But you did admit it's a conversation that had been going on. I look at him and I think for Scottish football, because he's cultured and he can play and he can get around the pitch, I think he's more suited to playing central defensive midfield. But I'd love to see Leon King go to Kilmarnock, Derek. Get an arm put around him by a good manager like Derek McInnes, who'll look after him and get him a real good season where he gets 45 games. That's what he needs for me. These three kids that I've mentioned, they're all super talented. They've all got a chance, but it's not easy. And I think, are they good enough for Rangers right now? I'm not sure. No. I'm not sure about the other talent there being good enough for Rangers right now. I think it's a really, really, really tough environment to come through, and history proves that over a long period of time. How do you solve it? You have to have a manager that's going to be committed to putting young players in there. Clement says he is. Time will tell on that.
Yeah, if Kilmarnock want Leon King, then we'll have David Watson, please, Derek, if you are watching the show. But interesting points there. Great question, JD. Thank you for that. Let's move on. Tumbledown Vet says, do you believe giving Souttar a contract extension is more of the same when it comes to rewarding mediocrity and accepting less than best in class? This, of course, news over the weekend that John Souttar could be in line for a new and improved contract. He does have 2 years left on his current deal to run, but he will be, he's in line to get new improved terms on that. John Souttar's coming for a bit of criticism in his time at Rangers. Jonny, I think he's prone to a mistake or two, like most centre-backs, you've got to say. Has played on the left-hand side of the back two, more so when Connor Goldson was at the club. But John Souttar, is he deserving of a new contract?
Well, one thing I would say about John Souttar is I've always felt he's got a mistake in him most games.
Yeah.
But he's terrific bringing the ball out. And I think John Souttar's good enough to be a right good player for Rangers in Scottish football. Will he go through the season without making 10 mistakes? No. But what he brings in terms of going up against deep defences, carrying the ball through the lines, I think it's a really, really, really good skill to have in your squad. One thing I would say about John Souttar, he's looked a lot better on the right side of defence.
Yeah.
I think him and Proper's a nice looking potential partnership.
Yeah.
You've got the experienced guy who's going to be able to be a bit of a leader and talk Souttar through the games, and then you've got that power and that drive from Souttar. So I think you have to give him a new contract. He's 2 years left. Rangers have been really, really poor at kind of managing their assets. And I don't think you'd have any problem selling John Souttar if you wanted to move him on, say, to a championship club. I think he would be someone that would be, pardon the pun, but suitors for. And therefore, I think you want to get into a situation where he's tied up.
Yeah.
Is he the perfect player, Derek? No. But in the scenario we're in, they have to shut down this Borna Barisic, Ryan Kent, Alfredo Morelos, John Lundstrom situation. They have to start, if they are going to sell players, they need to get some money in for them.
Yeah, I totally get that. Good question, buddy.
What's your take on Souttar?
Listen, he can frustrate at times, but there's a reason he's at Rangers. If he was, if he wasn't error prone, then he wouldn't be at the club. He'd be playing in the English Premier League. For me, I think he's decent enough. Him and Proper, I think, the top two centre backs at the club. I'd still like to see Rangers bring in another centre half. I know Clinton Enciala has been brought in, but more so one for the future, isn't he? So with Goldson leaving, I would like to see someone else in there. Ben Davis leaving, of course, down to Birmingham. So I think that is an area that I would like to see Rangers strengthen in. Whether they can bring someone in or not, who knows? But Souttar for me, one of the first names in the team sheet until Rangers bring in a better centre half. But I get the point about some fans being a bit iffy about giving them a new deal on improved terms, whether he's deserving of that. But like you, Jonny, you don't want to see players entering that final year of their deal and with the prospect of talking to other clubs and moving on for nothing. He's got a valuation on his head, John Souttar, so I'd imagine it'd be a lot about protecting that asset as well as improving his current terms. So, let's move on. Next question. Hi, it's Gary. Says, if we can't move Hagi and Cantwell out by the close of the window, do you think Clement will give them a shot to impress in the first team for the January window, or do you think they will be in the B team until they leave? Well, Todd Cantwell won't even be in the B team because, he's asked not to be, whereas Yanis Hagi has been playing for the B team. Thought it was interesting his dad came out in the Romanian press, Jonny, and absolutely lambasted Rangers for what he calls the ugly treatment of his son. And he says that he told them to shut up during heated discussions about his future. Hagi, of course, has rejected the chance to move back to Romania. Remains to be seen if a club elsewhere are going to take him off Rangers' hands. Blackburn, of course, linked with the move for Todd Cantwell. It's absolutely essential Rangers get these two players out the door before the window shuts. If they are here in talking sake, Jonny, we know about the wage issue with Hagi. I think it would be an absolute waste to have him not featuring until the next window. I would be looking to play him regardless and featuring because he would provide Rangers with an option. The issue being, of course, the manager doesn't fancy him. That is at the bottom line. And, Cantwell, we all know, doesn't want to play for the club again. So, the sooner these two lads go out the door, the better.
Yeah, listen, I think there's a danger with us of looking back with rose-tinted spectacles at Yanis Hagi in the 55 season. And if it's that version of Yanis Hagi, we're all going, what on earth is going on here? What are you thinking about? But he suffered a really, really bad injury and lost nearly 2 years of his career. In fact, more than that, because that spell in Spain was a disaster. He hardly played. So you're talking about a guy that's not developed, I would say, at the level that you would have expected, given where he was. And he was such an important player for Rangers that season. It's hard to fully...
Well, that's what his dad was sort of. That's what his dad was saying, wasn't it? He was a champion with Rangers, but I mean, this was all pre-injury. It's just curtailed his career, hasn't it?
Yeah, he's been desperately unlucky that injury took place when it did. It was obviously, I think was it in pre-season, Derek? I can't remember exactly. It was in pre-season of the Europa League final season, and then so he was out for the entirety of that season, and then he came back, I think, towards the January of Michael Beale being the manager, and Beale sort of talked him up a little bit on what he was going to bring, but then he wasn't quite there, and then he comes back for pre-season. You're thinking, right, he's been out for a long time here, and then he doesn't get a chance, and he's off to Spain. So it was a difficult one, a really, really, really difficult one for Hagi, and we don't know what the player is like now. We don't know what he's shown up on the training ground. Is he, for example, less mobile than he once was?
Yeah, I thought he was decent at the Euros for Romania. Didn't pull up any trees, but I thought he was decent enough. And he certainly could. He was certainly, I think, enhanced given what the options, especially in that number 10 position. Jonny, I know he doesn't have much pace, if any, but he would certainly enhance the first team at this moment in time.
Look, again, Derek, I totally understand that argument. I'm not shooting it down because, Yanis Hagi was always crying out to play as a 10, wasn't he? I mean, that's his position. So he was crying out to get a situation where Rangers changed their formation, because in the Gerrard years, there was 2 10s, remember? It was a right 10 and a left 10, and it was kind of like a hybrid position. And you knew that if you put Yanis Hagi in the centre, he was a player that was not only capable of pinging one in the top bin from 25 yards, but finding that deadly pass that would send someone on their way and into goal. And he has that stardust about his game. But you've got to try and understand why the club are doing what they're doing. You have to imagine that they don't feel like he would be worth the wage rise that he's going to get if he plays a few more games. I understand that it's in the sort of higher 20s if he was to trigger that wage rise. And also, I'm led to believe that there may be a payment due to his former club of a substantial hundreds of thousands should he play another certain amount of games. So the Rangers are probably factoring those two elements together and thinking, well, how many games is he going to play? How recovered is he from injury? And there's this groundswell, people saying, well, if he's not going anywhere, you need to kind of utilise him. And I do understand that. It'd be great if the club and Yanis could find some sort of middle ground, maybe extend his contract, but that would depend on whether or not Clement actually wants him. He may think he wants somebody with, like we discussed, someone with more pace, someone with more dynamism, someone who can really press if the game is if you're going away somewhere where you're under the cosh. I mean, Yanis Hagi, I don't think anyone can question his professionalism or his work ethic, but maybe it's not his natural game running about like a Kenny Miller or a Cyril Dessers, like shutting down passing lanes. So it's a difficult one. As for Todd Cantwell, I don't think that's difficult at all. It's clear that the player wants to leave Scotland. I think he doesn't like the Goldfish Bowl. I think he's found it problematic and challenging. Probably doesn't like the physicality of the football, and just thinks, I'd like to do something else. And when you've got a player who feels that way, you're kind of just best to let them go and find a solution.
Someone else's problem. Yeah.
I think it's a real sad indictment on Todd Cantwell's career if he can't find a club, because the boy is talented. And when he's on it and when he's managed correctly.
There's the mentality issue there, Jonny, though, isn't there? I mean, it's not the first club he's done this at.
For me, I think Todd Cantwell needs to go somewhere where he's a big fish in a small pond. Go somewhere where everyone loves him, the manager will put an arm around him, and maybe not a club where there's such a relentless pressure as Rangers, both on and off the pitch. But is Todd a talented lad? Of course he is. Of course he is. He's a super talented footballer. But it's just not worked out, has it? The big games, he's not really, really stood up to the plate, I don't think. I don't think he's made the impact that you would have wanted him to have, given the kind of chats that people were having about him when he first came onto the scene with Norwich. People were talking about him being a £30 million midfielder, and this is a good few years ago. Someone that could maybe go to Manchester City. He's got the technical quality to do whatever he wants in the game, but I noticed that his agent was kind of plugging him around Italy. I think Italian football would be perfect for him, Derek. Where you got a bit more time on the ball. He'd be busy and athletic and energetic in that league, and I think he would do well there. But it's whether or not you can find a club that's willing to take a chance. And that looks like it's the problem, doesn't it? Because it is a surprise no one seems to be that keen on it. There's talk about Blackburn Rovers. Does he want to go down back to the Championship? I mean, if I was Cantwell, I'd be saying, get me abroad, try something a wee bit different. Try and reinvent myself.
Yeah, I think I mean, there's interest in Saudi Arabia as well. But I agree. I think he needs to move out with the UK to try and reinvent himself somewhat. But his mentality called into question, there's no doubt about it. Just on Hagi, a few points coming in on the side of the screen, so I'll address these. James Quinn says, on the Hagi situation, can we not just offer him a new contract with reduced wages? I don't know how it works, but if Hagi wants to stay and is willing to tear up his contract and sign a new one, possibly. Just on that, I think Clement would have been pushing the board to spend the extra cash if he wanted Hagi as part of his plans. He hasn't done that, so I think that tells you everything that you need to know. And George McKee says, will the manager bring Hagi back into the fold if he's still there on Saturday morning? I would, but I would doubt it. So, there you go. Let's move on. Next question that's popped in here from Andrew Webster. Derek, you're a big advocate of Tom Lawrence when you signed. Have you been disappointed? Do you think the injuries have taken their toll, or his style is just not as suited to Clement? Scored at the weekend, of course, and has played
the weekend.
Yeah, he's played his part under the manager. He seems to be the go-to man in that number 10 position. I would have doubts about playing him at Parkhead at the weekend, I've got to say, given his mobility. Have been disappointed. I think that the injury he suffered against Ross County early on really affected him. Like Hagi, he's come back and he can certainly contribute, but mobility-wise, as I touched on, he doesn't have the pace that you would like a player to have in Clement's system. But he's certainly someone that's happy being here, Jonny, and I'm happy with him contributing. Not been much noise about him potentially leaving, not seen any concrete links to anywhere. But Tom Lawrence, what have you made of him?
I'm led to believe that he's very happy here.
Yeah.
I think he's been really, really unlucky as a Rangers player. He scored 4 goals in his first 5 games and looked really, really good. And then gets a major horrific injury. Another player that we're talking about with a horrific injury. Rangers have had such incredible bad luck. It's like somebody is piercing a voodoo doll every time Rangers sign a new player, because there's been so many of them. And Tom Lawrence is just the latest. I think you may well see a really improved Tom Lawrence as the season goes on, because part of it's all about building yourself back up after such a long period out. And even when he came back in, it was bitty, it was substitute appearances. You need to build into games.
Yep.
And I think now he's getting that. You're starting to see signs that physically he's looking a bit sharper, he's lasting longer, he's looking more hungry and energetic as the game goes on longer. Putting him up against Callum McGregor is an absolute no for me. An absolute no. And if that happens again, I'll be shocked that Clement doesn't see that there's a problem there. Mm-hmm. McGregor's a 31-year-old physical specimen who's at the top of his game, who knows Scottish football. Let's be honest, one of the best players in Scottish football, and just has dealt with the Cantwell and Lawrence on him. I'd like to see how he deals with Sterling on him. And if I was Clement, I'd be saying, I'd be going down the Craig Brown route of, you take care of the chief and then the Indians fall into line. And if you get hold of McGregor, if you get around McGregor, and Sterling has the physicality, the power, the pace, everything to do that. And he can also contribute. I mean, he's not a number 10 by any stretch of the imagination, but he's no slouch. He can cause problems up there.
Yeah.
I would get on top of him with Sterling and just say, we'll take McGregor off the board. We're taking Sterling off the board. Let's see how the rest of it falls into place, because McGregor's everything that Celtic do goes through McGregor.
I know.
And if you take McGregor out, they're diminished. But Tom Lawrence for me just doesn't have the defensive nous, the pace to keep up with Callum McGregor. He can cause him problems, with his skill and his quality and his shooting, but this is a game against Parkhead where you're going to be defending more than you're going to be attacking. And I think for me, Dujon Sterling's that man. How would you deal with McGregor?
Yeah, we need it. Yeah, we need energy in there. If anything, I would have a midfield of Barron, Diamandi, and Sterling. I would scrap the 10 for the trip to Parkhead. I just have those three. I'd maybe have Diamandi maybe pushing up slightly and
so
being
you would have him dealing with McGregor.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
So whoever's in that more advanced position is going to have to pick up McGregor.
Stuff him out. Yeah,
and that's why I'm saying it's almost like it's taking Sterling off the board. You're basically saying both these. It's like, you know, when you get in that situation with chess where you know you're going to take the queen, but you know your queen's going to get taken. You're maybe going up against a better player, but you're thinking to yourself, I've got more of a chance if they don't have their most powerful weapon.
Yep.
I think that's a way that you can consider doing it. I agree with you, though. I think Clement will more likely push Diamandi up and ask Diamandi to take care of him. And I think Diamandi's got a better shout of doing that. The only thing I would say is I'm not sure he's as tactically disciplined all the time as you need to be on McGregor. You know, I think Mohamed Diamandi is a young player learning his trade who's also forward-thinking in a lot of ways. Yes, he can play deeper, Derek, but I also think he's prone to the occasional brain fart or letting somebody run off the back of him. So that's why I think Sterling is such a good option there.
Yep, I think he has to go for legs in the middle of the park. So many Old Firm matches, Rangers have been overrun in there. So, we need to see power, energy, athleticism in there. And I think a Sterling, Barron, Diamandi midfield would certainly give the supporters a bit of optimism that they can get a positive result. Let's move on to the next question from Kev Miller. Derek, rather than try chase Hagi at the door, would we not be better explaining finances? Ask him to weave contract increase and get him back in the squad. If he gets offers suitable to both parties in January, he can go for best wishes. At least we can play him till then and increase his move potential. Feels like we're treating him foolishly, but sort of ties in what we said before. But thanks for your question, Kev. Just on the game at the weekend, Blazing Blue 72 says, would you start with the same 11 on Sunday as started on Saturday? Only change I'd have is proper for Balogun. Backline and midfield operated very well for the most part, covering and supporting each other. So that's what he would go with regards to the starting 11. Listen, I think it'll be interesting. I mean, right back's a concern for me, Jonny, having James Tavernier there. I think that will be an area that Celtic will look to exploit, as they have done in many Old Firm derbies. I've said it, the Scottish Cup final, I thought Tav was a bit exposed. I would rather have had Dujon Sterling playing there with maybe Tav pushed up slightly. But the right back area is a concern. Left back, I think Jefte has done pretty well since he's came in, hasn't he? I don't have too many concerns about that. I know defensively, I think there's certainly aspects that he can work on. But in terms of worries, right back is a concern on Sunday.
I don't disagree, Derek, but if the manager does what I think he'll do, which is, as you say, pushing Diamandi up, it does allow Dujon Sterling to kind of drop into that full-back area alongside Tavernier and help him out.
Yeah.
So if he's playing in midfield, then I'm less concerned, because I definitely think he can add his graft and his power and his pace, just helping Tavernier out. Czerny will have a big role to play in that as well. And I think if those three are working together, then I think they can be really, really strong. I think on the other side, if you're looking at Hefty, Barron and Matondo, that's actually where I have more concerns, Derek. Just because of the inexperience of the three of them. You know, you're talking about a massive game. Barron and Hefty have never played in an Old Firm game before. Okay, Matondo's produced in an Old Firm game, but I don't think defensively that's his strong suit either. He certainly works hard and gets back. But I think Celtic might actually see that right-hand side as kind of an area they can have a lot of joy in. But I don't think Clement's got a lot of options there, Derek. I agree with you completely on that side. I think what you said is what he'll go with. I think swap out Tom Lawrence for Diamandi and you've got your team. Yep. Maybe Balogun goes out and Proper comes in, and that'll be a big telltale sign in terms of how much they rate Proper. It also depends on if Balogun's recovered or not. I think Clement did say that he expected everyone to be fit, with the exception of Ridvan Yilmaz. But If it was me, I would definitely go with proper. I would go proper and Souttar, and then I would put Diamandi in, and I think most people would agree with that lineup. They just simply isn't the depth in that squad where you could really go with much else, and that's why we expect and need to see some transfers coming into this club over the coming days.
Yeah. Let's get to the next question. James McGill on the side of my screen, he says, with it being late in the transfer window now, do you think this will end up costing us even more with it being late in the window? Listen, Rangers need to get money in, and there has been a number of links in the last week or so, players linked, especially left wingers. So it's certainly an area that Rangers are looking to strengthen in. The manager did say expects it to be a busy week, and we also expect that as well with departs. Not only Rangers, of course, it's a host of other clubs now reaching almost at the panic stage when they're looking to get players in and moving players on. So yeah, it will be intriguing to see the movement that's going to take place. Yeah, Jonny?
I don't think it'll end up costing Rangers more, because I think there's a lot of moving parts in the transfer window. So, for example, when Rangers sell a player, they can go out and buy another one, and that player that they're going to buy, the club might be desperate to sell that player because it's getting to the stage that's late in the transfer window, and they want to go out and get someone else. So I think it can work for you and it can work against you, and it just depends on the situation and the player. But there's no doubt, as the clock kicks down, there's players available that wouldn't normally be available, and there's opportunities that are there that wouldn't normally be there. Now, listen, this didn't work out, so I'm not suggesting it's a perfect example, but I don't think, for example, Aaron Ramsey would have been able to come into Rangers 3 or 4 days before that deal happened. It happened on deadline day, and the reason they made it work is because it came up as an option late on, because they were desperate to get him out, and there may be there was clearly a reason for that, as the events of that season showed us. But regardless, there's always opportunities there that present themselves based on this sort of domino effect that happens with other clubs' transfers.
Yeah.
So, listen, it could, if you're going to go and sign a striker, if you want to go and sign Shankland, our heart's going to turn around and say, with 5 minutes to go or 10 minutes to go in the window,
no chance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course not. And that's going to cost you more, because you have to make up the fact that you're taking a major player. But I think these other opportunities that kind of even it out. So, and by the way, I want to stress, I don't think there's anything in Shankland going to Rangers. I don't think that's going to happen. So
there's the regular mention of Lawrence Shankland yet. But let's move on. Sandy McKechnie gets in touch. Afternoon, Sandy says, is Lowry going down the same path as Cantwell? Talent wasted. Listen, I think he's only 21 years of age, Alex Lowry, and the club that he has been linked with, Carlisle United, I think that would be a good club for him down there. He probably thinks he could play at a higher level, but he just needs to go. And I think a move down south would certainly aid his development for me. I think he has to move away and just start again somewhere. I think he's had a tough time at the club, not only on the pitch but off it as well. So it doesn't look like it's going to happen for him at Rangers, but I wouldn't be writing him off as talent wasted at this moment in time, Jonny. I think, listen, I don't think it's going to happen at Rangers, but I think it can happen somewhere else, as it has done with a host of players down the years that maybe haven't quite done the business at Rangers, but they went on and enjoyed successful careers. I think about John Fleck, Charlie Adam, who was a decent player for Rangers, but they went on and carved really good careers down south.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. There's no doubt that Alex Lowry's a really, really good talent, and he's probably creatively one of the best in the last decade that Rangers have produced. But he needs to have an opportunity to show what he can do. And at 21, Derek, time's running out. 21 years old, you should really have 150 professional appearances behind you. If you want to really have a really good career, we talk about him as if he's a youngster. And the truth is, he's not really. We saw from Spain at the Euros that, if they're good enough, then he can be pitched in at an early age and really, really deliver. And you saw that with Yamal. So Alex Lowry, 5 years older than that, I don't think it's right to talk about him as a youngster anymore. He needs to go and prove what he's capable of. I think he's got way more talent than Carlisle United. But, that's a measure of where he is at the moment. And he's had a failed loan term at Hearts where they were very, very keen to get shot of him, weren't they? They weren't exactly hanging about.
No.
Stephen Naismith was pretty firm in that decision. And I think that's the next move down would be if you want to go to England, get away from the bubble or whatever.
Yep.
A club like Carlisle is going to be the next step. But I mean, he needs to bounce back from that and go and prove what he's worth. And maybe if he goes down there and scores 10 goals and assists 15, then Rangers look at him and go, oh, wow, okay, right.
Yeah.
Maybe need to look at this. But do you know what? I don't think it's going to happen, Derek. I've got no confidence it's going to happen because he's not given any suggestion that he'll be able to go and do that. And I think maybe he needs a few more people saying to him, I don't think you're going to do it, son. I think you're going to slip away from this game because sometimes you need that adversity. Everyone's probably around Alex Lowry telling him he's fantastic because we said at the start, in terms of his talent, he is fantastic, but the game's littered with players who are fantastic talents who were superseded by those who were half as good because they had the right mentality and they made the sacrifices and they took it seriously. And, you just have to do those things if you're going to make it as a professional, if you're going to have a professional career. You've got to listen to the older pros. You've got to listen to the managers and the coaches, and that's the only way it's going to work for you. And to translate that real talent that he has, I want him to go away and show it, but he needs to do it. It's all very well us saying about his talent, but it gets frustrating after a while.
Yeah, he needs to go somewhere else. There's no doubt about it. Fruit Pastel God says, 2 questions, please. Why are we continuing to pay Cantwell as he refuses to play? Surely that's a breach of contract. And would you take a point on Sunday? Cheers. On the second point, yes. On Cantwell, what do you make of this, Jonny? He's refusing to play.
I don't think he is. Yeah, so that's the problem with that is I don't think he's refusing to play. I think he's saying, I have no intention of remaining at the club. I want to leave. I want to leave Scotland. I don't like Scottish football. And I think when someone comes to you and says that, then you have to say, what's the point in saying, okay, you're going to be part of our setup until you go? If their mind's made up and they absolutely don't want to stay in the country because they don't like the country and they don't like the football in the country, they're going to leave eventually regardless, aren't they? So it's not, I think Cantwell might well say, well, he would prefer to be in with the boys and, he'd be happier with that and while he looks for his move. But I think there's no real option when somebody is so unequivocal and says, I'm leaving. The manager himself said that he didn't want him to leave. Clement said, I think I can do something with this player and I think I can, really, really develop him as part of the team and make use of him. But Cantwell, he wanted to leave and he wants to leave Scotland. So it's a difficult one because, as you say, if he doesn't move, where are we?
Yeah.
And then there's maybe a different conversation to be had. As for the second one, well, I think any Rangers fan at the moment would take a point at Parkhead. You always take a point at Parkhead if you're coming at it from a Rangers point of view, because
especially now,
you fancy your chances of winning the home games. So if you win the 2 home games, draw one of the games against Parkhead, you've picked up 7 points and Celtic have picked up 3. In an ideal world, when you're backing yourself. So I think a point away from home against Celtic is always a really good result. And the way they're playing at the moment, the way the manager has kind of moved them on, because they've definitely stepped up a gear. I think from last season, where I thought they were a bit of a mixed bag and you could get at them and they struggled putting teams away. I think they've moved on a little bit from that. I think you can see from Brendan Rodgers, his whole kind of demeanour is much more positive. He's not really even getting that down about the whole transfer situation where they're not spending the money that they clearly have.
Yeah.
I think Celtic have developed and they've ironed out some of the kinks. And for me, it's going to be really, really difficult to get a point. If they get a point, it's a right good result.
Couple of questions before we wrap up. Russell Brown, Derek, Jonny, do we feel that the players Mentally can go there on Sunday and take all 3 points. Still question marks around the same problem players, Tav, Lawrence, etc. Listen, there are question marks mentally. I think Celtic with the Indian sign over Rangers. When was the last time Rangers went to Parkhead and won the Goldson double, I think? That tells you everything you need to know. So whether this Rangers team have the balls, so to speak, to go out there and win the game, I have my doubts. But I think there's still at least 3 quality additions shot before we can start thinking they can go to Parkhead and beat Celtic for me. And we talked about Tav before. Lawrence, I wouldn't play at Parkhead. That's where I stand on it. Where do you stand on it, Jonny? I just don't think... we'll need to see. Of course, there are a number of new players in there. Jefty, we've discussed. Connor Barron's in there. But Robin Proper, we discussed as well. It'll be his first Old Firm match.
It's a massive game for James Tavernier. There's no doubt about it, Derek. He needs to draw a line under this, getting tortured every time that Celtic come to town. And Dyson Maida in particular, who he seems to have developed a sort of psychological barrier about. Now, listen, Tavernier is not as fast as he once was, and 5 years ago he could have probably matched Maida or pretty much matched him enough that he could get back and solve some of the issues that he poses. But he's going to have to find it from somewhere for this game, and if that's about just being more intelligent and limiting his forward runs so that he can retain the shape of the team, or whether or not it's just being full of confidence and having a really dynamic performance. One way or another, he's going to have to step up to the plate on this one, because defensively, I think he's going to be tested, and he needs to make that his priority in this game. Yeah,
agreed. Steve says, feel a defeat coming on Sunday, but as always, the manner of a defeat says a lot. Hope if we go down, we go swinging. This squad is far away from contention. And I'll wrap up this one. Heard anything about the rumours from Chick? We are getting Jeremy Sarmiento from Brighton. This is the Ecuadorian winger. He was linked with a loan move to Aberdeen last month, no less. Spent the second half of last season on loan at Ipswich Town. Haven't seen much of him, I've got to say, and I haven't seen these rumours, Chick. But listen, it's another winger. Wouldn't be surprised if he was on what appears to be a long list of wingers that Rangers are looking at. But I haven't heard anything about that at this moment in time. Right, that'll do us there. Big thanks to you all for interacting and for firing your questions in. Much appreciated, and thanks as ever for your support to the Rangers Review Extra channel. Big thanks to Jonny as well. Thank you, Jonny.
Delighted to be on, Derek. Always a pleasure. Hopefully I've not talked too much nonsense that people are calling me Mad Jonny.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to have you back on. But that'll do us there, folks. I'll be on tomorrow, the morning briefing with Joshua. We hope you can join us for that. Until then, enjoy your Tuesday. Bye for now.